Alright, so today we're going to talk about CINE EI Mode and CINE EI Quick. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you exactly how you enable those modes. And then we're going to kind of play with the modes. I'm going to show you how they work. And then we're going to actually go to Premiere Pro and I'm going to show you what you actually get recorded to your card when you're shooting in CINE EI. Because it could be a little confusing if you're not paying attention. Before we get started, I had a viewer question about the DJI microphone. The viewer was wondering if you flip the microphone inward instead of placing it outside of your clothing with the magnet, will it still work well with the receiver transmitter? Will it still communicate well, and will things still sound okay? And I'm going to do this whole video like that, so you let me know, but I think it works fine. Right now you can see I have it it's outside of my undershirt, but that's only because I didn't really want to flip it to my skin and go through 2 layers of clothing, but I can, or you could just do this. What if the magnet's here, I guess you wonder, outside of your clothing? But the only thing about that, I don't like the way it looks. But I'm gonna move it downward so you can't even really see it anyway. But yeah, so that's how it is right now, and I'm sure it sounds fine. So either way, the way I had it before, or flipped around this way, or maybe flipped around the other way underneath the shirt, I'm sure either way it's gonna work fine. So there's your test. All right, so let me show you exactly how to get to CINE EI or CINE EI Quick. So you go to Menu, then you go to that little camera icon, which is the shooting menu. And then the first page there says Image Quality Recording. You hit that option. And then from there you can see Log Shooting Setting. And you have Off, Flexible ISO, CINE EI Quick, and then CINE EI. So once you select one of those modes, you're now shooting in log mode. And if you're doing CINE EI, you need to switch it to either 800 or 2500 because that's all that it can shoot in. First, I just want to show you how you would switch from either 800 to 2500. You need to go back into the menu. And then instead of going to the shooting menu, you're going to go right underneath to the exposure menu and then select your first option, which is exposure. And then from there, you just select base ISO. And then you can select either 800 or 2500. And if you want to set up a custom button for the base ISO, I'm going to show you how to do that. You just go to your briefcase and you go to Operation, Customize, and then you go to the custom key dial sets. And from here, you can pretty much go to what you want. So scroll down here and then you'll see number 3. I changed it to base ISO. Before it was set to, I think it was just ISO/EI. But if you just change it to base ISO switch instead, then it will do this. All right, so getting back to CINE EI, I just showed you how you can get to it and how you can get to CINE EI Quick. The difference between the two, CINE EI, it's either 800 or 2500, that's it. CINE EI Quick is really the same thing. It's either 800 or 2500. The difference is that when you're using your ISO on the camera, you can set a switch point. So if I set the switch point to be 1600 ISO, when I'm going from, 200 up to 1600, or I should say up to like 1000, it's going to be an L, which means 800 low. So it's going to be on the low native ISO setting, which is 800. Once I get to 1600 and above, it's going to switch to the higher ISO setting, or the higher native ISO setting, which is 2500. It just does it automatically instead of you having to click a button or go to a menu. It's already done for you. Basically, it's just locking you into 2500 or 800 ISO, the native ISOs for this camera. And you want to shoot at a native ISO, especially in S-Log, because that's where you're going to get the best image performance, the best image quality. So you're going to get the lowest amounts of noise, the best dynamic range, which is really important when you're shooting outdoors. So that's where you want to be, 800 or 2500. However, if you were to just leave it in flexible ISO and you put it on 800 or 2500, it's really the same thing. There's no difference. The only difference is when you move to ISOs that are either below it or above or in the middle of those native ISOs, your ISO is actually changing, not just on your LCD monitor, but it's actually changing to what's being recorded on the card. So I know that's very confusing, but I'm gonna show you a side-by-side. So we're on 200 ISO, and as I go up, 400, 640, 800, once I get to 1600, it's gonna automatically switch over to 2500 ISO, which is the high, the H at the end. And the whole time, you can see my screen, the LCD is going up and down in terms of exposure. It's brighter, it's lower, but that's not what's being recorded to the card. What's being recorded to the card is either 800 or 2500. All right, so that was CINE Quick Mode. Let's go back to the regular CINE EI mode, and let's do the same thing. Okay, so here we are in CINE EI. And you can see it starts at a base of 640 ISO. That's because right now I have it set to 2500 as my native ISO. And if I go up, we can see that the screen gets brighter and brighter as I go all the way up to the ISO range. But that's, once again, not going to be what we get on the card. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing. I think if you absolutely had to use CINE EI, or at least if I had to use it, right? If I'm using CINE EI, which I probably will use it sometimes, I'm probably going to use CINE EI Quick and not even worry about, customizing that button for the base ISO. Just because with the nature of the things that I typically shoot, which are really weddings mostly, or sometimes I'm shooting like smaller commercials by myself, because I'm always like scrambling, I can just see myself making a mistake and being in 800 when I really should be in 2500. So I'd rather just let the camera do that for me. So like I showed you, set the switch to 1600 or 2500, it really doesn't matter. But I think 1600 is probably a good point for it to switch over to the high native ISO to 2500. So just use Quick and let it do it on its own. I think that's the best way to use it. Anyway, let me know. Let me know what you guys think about that. Do you guys even use the CINE EI? Do you use flexible ISO when you're shooting log? Am I just wrong about how it works? Do you use Quick? Do you use the regular mode where you gotta switch from base 800 to 2500? I hope that helped you. Remember, anything that I ever talk about in these videos or any of the equipment used to make these videos is always in the descriptions below, so you can go ahead and check those out. In the next video, we're probably going to take a look at the image stabilization with the FX30 and do some testing. So make sure you subscribe for that, and I guess I'll see you soon.